Time was past, hopping down, cause failing's not an option, and dad is not a noun, not at all.
How would I describe our curriculum model? I'm gonna go with eclectic. So we mixed in influences from Montessori, from project-based learning, from Reggio Emilia, from agile learning, from Acting Academy, all these wonderful different models and approaches, and combine them in our own way to best serve the students that we have right now. So, and you come and you sit in our classes and talk with our students, you'll kind of see a bit of a lot of different things, and we love that. And so we like to just continue to understand our students and what they need and what they enjoy and thrive in, and create the learning environment. My background is in software engineering and in curriculum design, and so I try to incorporate those influences into our approach as a school. So how do we approach it in a very entrepreneurial, design thinking sort of way to say, okay, we have this idea, this new type of thing has come out, let's try it, let's think about it, let's do a test over the summer or with a small group and just see how folks respond, and being very flexible. And at the end of the day, we just want everyone to be weird and embrace being weird and love being nerdy and feel safe and loved when they come in the door each day. So whatever element of whatever model makes that happen in that class or in that project on that trip, that's what we're gonna do. So that's what we love. We are eclectic.
Welcome to another episode of Dad is Not a Now. My name is Ishmael, changing the narrative for Mikala fatherhood, as well as changing on the narrative on the things I care about. And today I'm truly honored and humbly privileged to have this special guest on. She is the founding principal of the Life School out of Atlanta. Principal Streeter is with me. Let me tell you a little bit about the Life School. Life School is an innovative school in Atlanta where students learn through passion projects and hands-on academic work. As a life learner, our students start business, intern with companies that take project-based course and partake in the offset experience, allowing them the opportunity to earn the accredited high school diploma in a non-traditional and nurturing environment. Principal Streeter, thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for coming on. My next question, I always ask my guests because I'm all about mental health. How's your heart?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think my heart is good. I think there's always a tough time in the winter when it's just so cold outside, but we've been having some good weather here in Atlanta lately. And so it's been really nice to just sit outside with the dogs in the morning and just watch them run around and stare up at the trees. So that's been really helpful to get through this winter crunch.
That's good to hear. But how are you feeling? Because I know you're a little under the weather at the moment. But how are you feeling at the moment?
I feel okay right now. I appreciate you asking me about that. Yeah. The change of seasons has, taken its toll. So I'm ready to feel better and get back out there for sure.
And I know the students miss you, and then it definitely want you back. Um,
Mhm.
but what does unschooling mean? Because what you're doing at Life School is that you're changing the dynamic of how kids learn. Because right now, like if you go into like public schools, we're teaching kids through relic lens.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
what you're doing, you're flipping the script. So talk about what does unschooling mean?
Right. So unschooling is definitely a big term right now. And I think it's becoming a bit even sort of controversial as we go through the pandemic. And thus, this idea of questioning what schooling looks like, what education looks like for our families, especially for Black and Brown families, and just how do we um, understand what it is that our children need and not just like survive, 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 but really allow them to have all the joy and all the energy and exploration that is possible, but they don't always have the opportunity to do. So when we think about unschooling, it's definitely very much about um, how do we step away from what most of us know at school and just begin to bit by bit really question each little piece and say, is this working? Is this not? How can we improve it? Will it feel more natural, more organic? And how do we go in that direction? How do we listen to our children more? How do we accept them as whole people, even if they're in a different developmental stage than us as adults, and be able to respond and move based on them as well?
And I think one of the big questions I want to ask too is
Mhm.
um, break down the difference between school and education, because I think a lot of people have a misconception of school and education as same thing. So if you can break down the difference.
Yeah, so when you think about school, you often do think about education and vice versa, but it's definitely possible to go through large chunks of your schooling and not be educated in meaningful ways and to graduate and not feel like you're prepared for the world. So oftentimes people say, did you learn to pay your taxes or something like that? And now, so I went to MIT undergrad for computer science. And one thing they talked about there is that we're going to teach you a lot of stuff, but it's possible that by the time you graduate or 5, 10 years into your career, that all this will be obsolete, like completely. And in a lot of cases, it has been since I graduated. And so what they were focused on is learning how to learn and learning how to think through problems. And so even though my background was in something more technical, to be able to translate it to education and say, here's this giant sort of challenge in our society around how we educate our children. And so how do I take that like a big sort of software project and just chunk it, this huge massive thing, and then like build it back up little by little until, it feels more right. It feels more natural and families are responding and engaging and that alignment that's possible, where you can go to school and receive a well-rounded education. You may not learn how to fill out every form or use every software, but you know how to search for it. You have a network of people to support you. You can use AI. Ask ChatGPT to help you fill out your taxes, right? You know that those resources are there, and so whatever the world brings, no one when I was in high school was really thinking there would be a pandemic. So how could we have been prepared to go through that? But to know how to think about those kinds of situations, that's what we really want for our kids.
And I think the one thing that's powerful, if you can break down a little bit more too,
Mhm.
is the beauty of the difference between school and education is with education, you can adapt to the current environment.
Mm.
School, you have these structures, you have this red tape in place
Mhm.
where it's hard for a teacher to educate in real time.
Mm.
So can you like talk about like that act what you're doing educational wise to adapt to our current world?
Right. So one thing that is valuable about having a community built on these principles that we've been talking about is that we are able to be agile and listen to what students are thinking about, what parents, community members are thinking about, what's happening in the world, and be able to adapt to that and to help students understand. So I mentioned about AI and about Chat GPT. And so a lot of educators are really concerned about it for students cheating on essays or cheating on tests or whatnot. And so we can sort of look at it with that sort of deficit mindset, or we can say, how can we share with students about these tools and talk with them, have conversations with them about ways to use it in constructive ways that don't take away from some of those core aspects of the writing process. And that's a really a big part of building that rapport and that relationship with students. So when you say, I want you to use it for the outline, I want you to draft some thesis statements, but I still really want to know what's in your heart about this topic you're writing on, then if there's that relationship is there, they understand, they can at least better understand where you're coming from and be able to be transparent about this is how I use it. So we've had so many talks with students about how to use ChatGPT and Midjourney and all these different tools, and they've come up with some really cool stuff, and it's been exciting to see them just open their eyes about all the different possibilities, and then for them to be the ones teaching their other teachers, like, oh, Miss So and So, you should be using this. This will help us. So it's been a really cool journey with them so far, and just and as we go forward and seeing how other people use it, I'm getting a lot more ideas about even more ways to use with students.
And what I love about that too is that what the kids learn from your school is what they're doing is they're bringing it back to their parents. Because when you
Mm-hmm.
talk about technology and things like that, a lot of today's parents are novice to it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the most powerful thing that you're doing at the school. My next question is, what is self-directed learning? What is
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yes. So self directed learning is all about understanding how you learn, understanding how you think and what works for you and what doesn't, and being able to follow your own interests and your own ideas about what your education, what learning, whether it's all of your education or like bits and pieces of it, and be able to sort of build this skill around self reliance and independence. That if I have an idea, I have a question, right? I can know about informational interviews. I know how to use AI to map out, some exploration possibilities or passion projects. I can carve out time. I can connect with mentors and experts to be able to explore whatever this interest is. And now, when you look at that on a scale of a school or some kind of learning community, right, then you have this network of scale, right, where I can say, oh, here are multiple people with similar interests, or here this other group of kids who have this whole other interest that I haven't considered. They're my friends. Let me join this music project with them in the music studio, right? Let me try this, and I don't know if I will like it, right? And then I try it and I love it. I didn't know I had this talent, or I don't like it. And now I know that too. But I also know, learn the software and these other things around the way. And so what we try to do is create this space for students to share and grow together, and not have it be like, oh, I have this secret genius talent, but I only work on it after school or only work on it on the weekends. How do we bring more of students' voices and their ideas into their learning experience?
And I love this quote. As a principal, what does this quote means to you? The
Okay.
point of life is not school; it's about the adventure.
I love that. That's really nice. Yes. So learning should definitely be an adventure, and it's so much about the unknown, right? It's not, if I do this and I do this and I do this, then I'll have this life. It's like, where are things taking you? Right? Where do you want to go as a next step? But also, how am I making informed decisions? And so we work a lot on just the exposure piece, because a lot of kids come in and say, I love video games, so I want to be a coder. And it's like, well, there are a million different aspects of that. Do you want to code the game? Do you want to sit for that? Do you want to do the art or the music or the marketing? Like, do you want to do the events? Right? So all these components, just even in that one space, And we really want to open their minds and their eyes to all of these different possibilities, but then also equip them with the tools, the skills, the resume, you know, to be able to go out and get an internship and to explore all of those different interests and dig a little bit deeper into them. A lot of people say, you know, I'll wait till college, right? And I'll get to college and that's where I'll do something cool and fun, right?
Mm.
But that's a really expensive gamble, you know. You
Very
should have
true.
definitely explored things, explored your interests before you get there. Because even if you decide that college is a really good next step for you, which one? Which
Yeah.
country?
Yeah.
Big school, small school, design school, architect, you know what I mean? There's so many different choices. So we want to give students as much space as possible from when they're super little in kindergarten all the way up through senior year to really know I've tried a ton of things. And at the end, you've tried a million things and you still don't know, well, at least you know that those things are not it right now.
Right.
And you have somewhere to start, you know, to go forward as you head into adulthood.
And what I love what you're doing with the school is like you're developing kids from pre-K to 12th. But what I love is that how often, unfortunately, what we do in our school system, we create this box for
Mm,
kids. And what you're doing in the school is like you're breaking this box. You're letting kids experience life
mm-hmm,
through just community and through just having business leaders and people in the top of their profession
mm-hmm,
taking that time to talk to the kids. And I think one of the big things is if the one thing I read was when you get into children's development, right? When you
mm-hmm,
get into like their, let's say their teenage years,
mm-hmm,
the one thing I learned was through the study is that when a kid get at a certain age, that kid should get that college experience at that age where they should be able to experience life
mm-hmm,
from the I would say not from the from their from their parents, but you know, just like breaking away a little bit from their family a little bit so
mm-hmm,
they can experience life a little bit, try to figure out what they want to do, because I think that age group from 12 to 13, I think that's like the vital age for kids, because
mm-hmm,
that kind of is that age range where they kind of figure out what they want to do.
mm-hmm.
They might change their life. They might change their mind when they get later, when they get into
Right.
the like 18s or 20s. But when they're 12 and 13, that's when they make that kind of crucial decision of like what they want to be.
Mm-hmm,
And what I love what you're doing with the school is that you're giving these kids that experience, that you're giving them so many options where they can choose, which
mm-hmm.
public schools don't do. Um, can you kind of talk about that a little bit? I don't know if I make sense by saying that a little bit, but can you kind of like dig deep into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I can share about our middle school program that is in that age range of 12 and 13, because it's not just a high school thing of pursuing your interests. Even in elementary and middle school, we want students to begin to feel that sense of agency and ownership over their space and their learning. And a lot of times, if students are coming from a more traditional environment, then it is a big thing to um, kind of give them small choices and small decisions and they can practice with those and build their way up so they don't have to start being completely self-directed or having this strong sense of agency. It may be very unfamiliar, even simple things like I can just have a snack, you know, because I'm hungry,
Right.
right? Or I can go to the bathroom because I need to go. And for a lot of students, that's novel and scary and weird, and they're just not quite sure what to do. Or like you can't sit in class and just hide, you
Right.
know? Everybody sees you. We want to know what you think. You need to have a thought, you know? And that for a lot of students is novel. And so we have this sort of progressive or scaffolded introduction where they can just kind of build their way up into feeling more self directed and feeling like they have more of a space to explore the interests. So in middle school, they also have, as well as in high school, they have a passion projects class where they learn how to think about their interests, they learn how to map out projects, look at research around, what are different ways to explore this interest. A lot of times students will initially default to, I'm just going to draw, or, I'm just going to do something I already know how to do really well. That's not really a challenge. And so there's a lot of conversation about, you can draw, but what is the next level of that for you? Where are your skills now? What would a push look like for you in like a creative space? And then in the projects in their classes. So they right now in middle school, they're learning about bird watching is their current nature study for science. So they walk all around the city and learn all about all these different birds. And they're doing a documentary in social studies. So they get to meet with like local leaders, and we're in downtown Atlanta. So we're near City Hall, the state capitol building, all these different organizations and businesses and things right there in the heart of the city. And so they get to talk with, people who are in the mix, making changes in society and exploring and having real influence over some of the topics of social justice that they're exploring in their class. And so they can get their thoughts, get their opinions, and be able to um, learn about media as a storytelling medium to be able to share their perspective as young people on the world. And so even if they never said, uh, filmmaking, right, or writing or any of that is their passion, even through their classes, by being a part of this project, now they've built a skill that they can take to their passion project and say, I love art, but now maybe I'll make a film about it. And what would that look like? And so we want them through their classes to build skills that they can use throughout the rest of their learning.
And I think what I love what you guys are doing, whether the key word that you brought up is that you value their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Because we come from a generation where whatever a parent say, that's law,
Yeah.
no
Mm-hmm.
matter what, they could be in the wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but no matter what. And I love that. And you're creating this roadmap where you value their opinion, but you're creating this roadmap of how they can succeed
Mm-hmm.
in life through what they're interested in.
Yeah.
My next question, I think is a big question right here, is it's another quote.
Okay.
Board teachers shatter shadow their students' imagination.
Mm.
So how do you recruit and keep teachers at your school?
Well, we have a big point of pride around everyone is weird in their own way, staff and students. And so each teacher can talk about like, yeah, I'm weird because I love this, like me. I love tech, AI, coding, and painting and collage, and like nature and trees and my dogs. And so there are all these different things that you wouldn't necessarily think are connected because you're supposed to be like left brain or right brain, but you don't have to be.
Right.
And we really like for teachers when they come in to have this fullness of their personality and their interests that they can share with the students. So even if you're coming to our school to interview because you want to work with, I don't know, high school students on social studies or something. What else do you love? What else could you share with students? And so they may talk about cooking, or they may talk about, backpacking or something. Like our math teacher, one of our math teachers, he also loves carpentry. And so he incorporates like building things into his classes, and he loves outdoor adventures. So he goes like whitewater rafting and hiking, backpacking. And so he also recently picked up outdoor fitness class. And so
Wow.
they go rock climbing and stuff, and they get to see their math teacher in this totally different other space, but and connect with him on different levels. So at some point, he helped one of the students train for a marathon, and just a whole range of things that can just come out of that. And the same with all of our other teachers. Our music teacher, you used to perform and produce for all these big names, but then also, just loves Photoshop and graphic design, and people just all over the place. So that like eclectic nature and embracing that kind of weirdness, we want that in our staff, and to help set that culture for our students to um, share all these different parts of their identity, but also to discover new ones and be okay if they're not all sort of in the same space or category.
Wow, and that's awesome. But how does that recruiting process work? Like, do they reach out to you? Do you reach out to them? How does that process work?
Yeah, well, we recruit teachers through a number of different means. A fair amount of it is word of mouth. And so a current teacher will say, "Oh, I have a friend and they're great at this." Or a parent or someone will say that. But occasionally we will, use traditional like Indeed or something like that to connect with folks. And then other folks just hear about us online and just reach out and send us an email. Here's my resume. So we can't take everyone. Of course, we're a small
Right.
school, but we do definitely always appreciate those and just seeing all the different types of people who are out there and want to work in this space.